What does it take to get beyond the damage of words? I'm Katrina Collier. Join me each week as I explore what it takes to step into a happier future. My guests are sharing their stories of when they realised that they needed help and what it took to take that first step, so that you leave inspired and maybe even start on your own path to self-love, care, compassion, and of course happiness. So without further ado, let's hear their stories. Ruth Penfold-Brown, thank you so much for joining me on Beyond the Damage of Words, where I really just want to talk about anything that you've been through that's helped you on your healing journey and to inspire other people to take a step. And of course, welcome as a fellow light worker who's always spreading light everywhere you go, which is so wonderful. So tell me, what led you to take a step into healing? Like what happened? How did you even realize you just needed some help? What happened? Where did it all start?
It was quite a big life-changing moment, right? So I think the truth is I didn't realize, as I edged towards that path, I didn't realize what was happening. But I
get that.
I had chosen to be in an abusive relationship that I had been in from the age of 19. And from about the age of 27, I started to wake up, but I didn't leave the relationship until I was 30. But what happened was suddenly, actually, my now best friend arrived in my world and loved herself and was living a life that was different. And I thought she was utterly insane, utterly bonkers. I was like,
how does somebody love who they are?
Who does she think she is? Right? But her encouragement sort of, you know, there was a series of fortunate events. Like I left one job, I went to another job. Suddenly I was surrounded by men at this job who actually loved their wives and treated them well. And I was like, oh, this isn't what I have. And it kind of goes in, right? Now I reached the point of almost 30 and everything just felt wrong. My body was aching. I was getting like, I just didn't feel good. I didn't feel good, but I was making it about my career.
It's amazing how we create the illness within ourselves. I mean, illness is such a sign that there's trauma, isn't there?
Exactly right. And so I reached that point, and I was making it though about work, because I was working in recruitment at the time. And I was like, well, I didn't mean to do this job. I fell into it. That's what doesn't feel good. It's this job. It's this job.
Of course.
So I said to my boss, I said, honestly, I just don't feel good. And he was like, well, what, you should see my coach. And I was, at the time, I mean, this wasn't just a verbally abusive, controllingly abusive relationship. I was also the sole breadwinner. My ex-husband was accruing debt on my behalf. And so I was in a really deep financial pit. It was, a financial abuse as much as anything else, right?
Yeah.
So I said to the boss, I was like, I can't afford
Which was all your fault, of course. It was nothing to do with him.
Well, no, but he didn't even care. I mean, it didn't even register.
Oh, my word.
It didn't even register. He was just like, have you got another 20 quid? But
and of course, the funny thing is, he would have thought so little of you as well, look, because he felt so little of himself, that he would have been like, he would have torn you down a lot for that. Anyway, I'm taking you off point. So
no,
boss talks about a coach.
Right, yeah. So
I'm just analysing.
I said, look, I can't afford a coach. I appreciate you, but I can't afford a coach. And he was like, I'll pay for it. And and I saw this coach who was absolutely right smack bang in the middle of spirituality, but she was just no nonsense, and that works for me. I'm quite a straightforward person, and she asked me the one most powerful question that I will remember to this day in that first session, which was, when was the last time you experienced joy? And I, in the session, said, what are you talking about? I'm a really happy person. I went there to talk about my job, and she just kept asking me why I'd chosen. Like, tell me about your husband.
This sounds so familiar.
Tell me about your relationship.
This is my story. I fell into it. I fell
right?
into it as well.
You don't
Yeah.
mean it. I didn't want it. I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm here to
I'm
talk
here
about
for
work.
work.
I'm here
Yeah.
to talk about work. Go away. Anyway, so then but as I left that session, I, by the way, ran away for 3 months. But that
Of course.
question kept bouncing around inside me. And then, my ex-husband had affairs and, did other things. I mean, we don't need to go into the
Mhm.
detail of him, but something else like that was happening, and I knew. And this time, something about the question, it was like the perfect storm. Something about the question, and this time I was like, uh, this is what you're doing. This is the reality. And there was something in that. I'd been taken low
Mhm.
enough that I
Yeah.
realized that the pain of staying in this situation was greater than the
Mhm.
pain of leaving it. But I just want to leaving it isn't even easy at that moment, because you are so indoctrinated into being like, it was 12 years I was with this person, right? So
Yeah.
when I left, listeners, I left my last 20 pounds for my ex-husband to be able to eat, even though I was leaving him knowing that I had to go, and that, like, that is how dysfunctional these sorts of
Mm.
dynamics can be.
Yeah.
um and so, but
Because
I managed to
it's that
leave.
feeling of it's that I mean, how it'd be interesting to hear how you were attracted to that relationship. So I sense there's probably a bit before that, but also it's
Yeah,
their ability to make you feel so utterly worthless.
right,
That
right.
it's extraordinary because it's not a quick thing, is it? It goes over time.
No, no, exactly. And it's sort of, it's corrosive, right? So you start out
Yeah.
saying, no, that's not right. And then they kind of get their hooks in and go,
In
well, and suddenly your reality has
believing the
shifted,
words.
right?
Mm.
Your reality has shifted. It's the very definition of constant gaslighting all the
Constant
time,
gaslighting.
which means that
Yeah.
you don't know who you are. Like, at 30, when I actually
Yeah.
finally left, and I did obviously leave, I did not have a clue who I was, right? And
Yeah.
to add to your question, yeah, I mean, the ultimately in childhood, I was expecting love to. I was a sensitive, empathetic child who felt a lot of
Mhm.
things, and I was
Yeah.
expecting love in one way, and
Mm.
my childhood situation, the dynamics at home, meant I got that love in a different way, right? And now I
Yes.
can, as an adult, I can see that what the person was delivering, they thought was love,
Mm.
but to me as a child, it didn't feel like love. So I
Yeah.
made that mean that I'm not lovable, I'm not enough, I am not worthy,
Mhm.
which then led to a
Yeah.
full-blown rebellion in my teens, like drugs,
Mhm.
alcohol, whatever, at the age of sort of,
Numbing.
right,
Numbing.
numbing. And then
Numbing that
then I
feeling
stopped
of
all that.
lacking self-worth. Yeah.
That's it. Then I
It'd
stopped
be
all that,
interesting,
met my ex-husband, and then that's basically a different form of
how you
numbing
got there.
that took me up to
Yeah.
the age of 30.
Well, and he was this weird kind of security when you feel you're so unlovable and somebody is apparently loving you, even though they're not loving you. They're like something to cling on to. So that
That's
also
it.
makes it quite hard. You would be very interested in Dr. Elaine Aron, who is the master. Does one say that anymore? The expert, that's better, in
Yeah.
high sensitivity. She has written a
Great.
book about the HSP in love, which I haven't read yet, but I read the highlights and went, oh, yes. We do have different expectations as a highly
Right.
sensitive person, so you'll find that
Mm-hmm.
quite fascinating.
Yeah.
So what did you do? So obviously you started with a coach.
Yeah.
Did you stay with coaching? Was that the thing that got you out of it, or did they use a bit of coaching therapy?
Yeah.
Like, what was the biggest healing modality where you went, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, this is starting to work. This is making a difference"?
Yeah. Well, what I would
Because there's
say
so much out there, isn't there? Which is
is
exciting.
well, I mean, that coach kind of got me through the initial, like, separation, pretty much, right? But then
Yeah.
after that, honestly, it was a gradual awakening and stepping into who I truly am that came in a few different forms. Sometimes it
Yeah.
might have been a book.
Yeah.
The biggest one of all was um, finding stillness in my body through a
Mhm.
healing modality, which is called esoteric healing. It's not
Oh,
quite
yeah.
like a Reiki type thing, but I saw a practitioner for many years. And I mean, she was kind of like a teacher, guide, but through my
Yeah.
work with that person, who I've recommended many people to over the years, I learned how to meditate, which, trust me, was
Mm.
like taming a wild
Oh, yeah.
animal. Um,
I hear you.
and so, I mean, the most
Sitting still in your own thoughts is
right,
can be really tough initially. Yeah. But
really
once you
tough.
can, life-changing.
Well, and I think once you get still, like if you're able to get still, that's the
Mm.
moment where you're not running away from
Yeah.
yourself anymore, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not numbing, where you're not, and then suddenly you start to scrutinize everything in your world. Like, where am I numbing? Actually, what am I using for what
Yeah.
purpose according to how I'm
Mhm.
feeling? And then, I mean, literally, even to this day, I live in a continuous state of audit where I'm like, oh, hang on, there's a bit of numbing creeping in over here with this thing that's creeping
Mhm.
up. Okay, let's take a step back. Let's dial that back. What does that look like? But so honestly, the most life changing thing within all of that has been anything that I have learned that's helped me to learn how to regulate my nervous system, which has gone
Yeah.
from being like super super high happy to super super low, and now it's more of a
Mm.
gentle fluctuation. Now it's more of a gentle
Yeah.
wave,
Quite
right?
steady. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think, but that
Actually, gosh,
there,
that really resonates with my experience as well. Because I really do. It's funny you say that because the joy of writing this book has been getting it all out of my system and it
right,
has been deep healing. But I'd forgotten how much I fluctuated in the extremes.
right,
When you're
right.
in self loathing, you're super high or you're super low.
Yeah,
And actually, as someone who's full of that self love and care and compassion that I can hear when you talk about yourself, you have
yeah,
it's it is quite steady. Of course, you get excited, and there'll be moments where I'm like, "Woo!" And there are other moments where I'm a bit like, "Oh my god," and you're in floods of tears, and then I'm back in regulated, but they're not huge extremes. You're
no,
right, it's almost like a gentle undulation, isn't it? Not
yeah.
these troughs that were oh
Well, and
gosh,
you
I
know how
love
to
that.
regulate
Thank you for that
yourself.
reminder.
You know how to regulate yourself back in too, right? So if you are
Yes.
like, don't get me wrong, you still have your existential crisis day, where you're like, but then you're like, hold on, how can I self partner myself better today?
Yeah.
If I'm giving Ruth the most love in all the world, if she is my ultimate partner, and that's basically how I live, like I am my
Mhm.
ultimate partner. What do I need today?
Love that.
How do I need to cherish myself in today in order to weather the storm that I am in?
And do you know what I love about that is your being your ultimate partner makes you self-sufficient.
Yeah,
So I take it when you met Mr. Brown that
yeah,
he had to be the icing sugar on the top of the, well, I'm already quite
absolutely.
self-sufficient.
Yeah,
You
yeah, yeah,
see, it's
yeah.
like I don't like, oh, this sounds awful. You don't need the man. And I don't mean that in an awful way. I mean it's like he has to come in as an equal partner. There can't be
Right.
any imbalance. There can't be
No, no, no,
it's
no,
such a nice place to be,
exactly.
isn't it?
Well, and I would say, so yes, listeners, about a year ago, I got married, but it took a decade of being single and figuring out myself to
Mm.
call in the right masculine energy, but also the right man who was sufficiently awake and aware within himself in order that we
Mhm.
could then embark on this next deeper healing journey together, because true to form,
Yes.
you generally attract a partner who surfaces elements of unresolved things. So I do think that there is something that,
Mm.
like there was only so far that I could have gone on my own in my healing journey.
Yeah.
There is a
Mhm.
beautiful depth in the journey. And
Mhm.
no, to your point, no, you don't need a partner, but my goodness, the
Yeah.
mirror, if you select the right
Yes.
person, the mirror that they shine up for you
Provide. Mhm.
really helps you both grow bigger, right? And
Yeah.
both take up more space in the world than maybe you were, because once we are, even when we're healing, if you live alone, you kind of, like, things were great, but
Yeah. Yes. Well, actually, this is so true because I've realized on this recent trip I had with Sue Ingram was I was triggering. And of course,
Yeah.
what I realized is by living on my own, I have adapted to
Yes.
not trigger because I avoid situation. And it was like, that's really interesting. And so, but I love the way you said as well, because I feel, yes, I always feel like I'll be healing. There'll always be something
Yeah.
cropping up to heal.
Yeah.
It just becomes less and less and easier to do.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. And I love the fact you said calling in, because I feel I'll be calling in a man, but it's wanting someone
Yeah.
who will be on that journey with you. And I
Right. That's
think
it.
that's such a critical part that
Yeah.
because he's going to hold a mirror up to you, but he, she, whoever, they you have to be willing to have one held back. Otherwise,
Well,
it can't be a
exactly
successful
right.
partnership.
Exactly right. And for somebody like me who has this great big beating heart,
Mm.
it would still be easy for my heart being the size it is to be have less boundaries in a partnership because it
Yes.
want like
Mm.
my thing is service, right? But
Hmm.
what I could see as I arrived in this relationship was these elements of what I'm going to call toxic femininity creeping in. And that is where we're
Yes.
giving and doing and waiting to be noticed. And this is what I work with a lot of women with in the
Hmm.
workplace, right? It's like
Yeah.
we're giving and we're doing and we're waiting and actually, whereas he can be way too like, so think of it like this. If I'm very we, he's very me,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
and his me um forces me to have more boundaries and be like, oh,
Good.
okay, no, right? And that's the dance and that's the learning for us both, because
Mm.
just because you've realized why you chose something bad before, you don't get
Mm.
to undo it, right? Until you're in a conscious
Yeah.
partnership where you're like, oh, hang on, I could easily, something in me wants to do
Yes.
this, but I'm going to say, oh, no. Like, so for me, it's like something in me is wanting to
Yeah.
people please right now. Uh,
Hmm.
no. Oh, that's not right. I need to make sure that I
Yeah.
actually say what I feel. And this might sound crazy
Exactly.
because
Do you
I can
think
do
that's
it in the
why people
workplace. Go on,
do you
what were you
think
going to
that's
say?
why people please? Because I watched your little video about people pleasing. I thought, I'm so
Yeah,
glad you brought it up without me having to bring it up. But do you think that's why people please? Because they're not speaking up and asking for what they want. They just keep hoping if they please everyone, they'll be noticed instead of
absolutely.
speaking up
Absolutely.
and just
Yes.
asking. Interesting.
Well, and if
Interesting.
we can
I
be,
disagree with people pleasers. I very much believe in firm boundaries. Well, not
yeah,
firm, they
well,
fluctuate a bit, but boundaries. Boundaries.
but I mean, I think also though there is a beauty if your predisposition is towards people pleasing, no shade, because
Mm,
there is a beauty. You want to serve, right? You have a big heart and you want to serve and you want people to feel good. But what happens when we're people pleasing is, and we don't know we're doing it. It's not conscious, it's not deliberate, but we become a bit like a chameleon, and that means
yes.
that we leave our authentic self behind, and then
Yeah.
that means that the people that are meeting us aren't really meeting who we really are. And we're
So we're
denying,
people pleasing and we're harming ourselves at the same
right,
time.
right. And then maybe picking up resentments about the fact that they're not noticing that we've
Totally.
done all this stuff.
Yeah, and people don't see who you really are either.
Right.
So that
Yeah.
yeah. So actually, I'm going to ask you about that and being visible. So this is a huge step for me. I am opening up about everything, all of my spiritual gifts, everything. I'm just,
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe it's taken me to 52, but I'm doing it. I'm just opening the door. How did you feel? Because you've been beautifully vocal about your healing journey and your
Yeah.
trauma and,
Yeah.
encouraging other women. How did you feel? What made you speak up? I don't know. How did you just feel so brave?
Yeah. Do you know, I don't,
Big
probably a
question,
bit
I
like
know.
where you are, right? There
Mm,
was, if I look at who I was before and what I've been
yeah.
able to create for myself in my life after, even in the
Yes.
early days, if
Yeah.
uh, knowing how good you're feeling on the inside, I just felt like, my goodness, if just one person reads this post and thinks
Hmm.
about something in their world differently, then amazing,
Brilliant.
because I
Yeah.
became aware that my journey didn't start from one thing. It was lots of tiny little tidbits of
Yep.
inspiration that you kind of almost pull into yourself, and then
Mm.
it's not, so you're not necessarily aware, but there'll be like something that someone says one day and you think, something that something says maybe a few weeks later. And I can literally, like, I can still tell you those sentences that people said to me that they were just a
Mhm.
flyaway comment that they didn't realize had a huge effect. Right. And
Huge.
so,
See, that's the flip side of the damage of words, isn't it? It's the power of those words, the power of somebody speaking up and saying
right,
something to you that they have since forgotten, and you've gone life-changing moment.
right,
Powerful.
right.
I've
And
got
so,
goosebumps.
and
Goosebumps.
it really does, like, it really is life changing. So I mean,
Yeah.
I just, it almost felt like it wasn't a choice but to
Mm.
share. Don't get me wrong, I was still nervous about like tweeting or writing blogs when I started to do it, and every time I did it I'd
Yeah.
go like, oh, I've just said something
Yeah.
really personal. Oh. um um freak out a little inside, and then, but then as people, and let's just be clear, listeners, I don't have a huge following on anything, but
Mm.
what I do have is people sliding up into my DMs going,
Mm.
that thing that you said, that meant everything to me, and I will
Yeah.
take that any day, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's sort of
I
like
get
on a
that. I think it's because I fell over last year in the middle of a speaking a gig, right? Which I just think is hysterically funny. But when I was speaking, there were these really young girls in the front row. I'll call them girls because they were probably a bit like on their first job.
right,
They just seem so young to me. And it is that hilarious thing. The older you get, the younger they look. So they were
yeah,
probably in their early 20s.
yeah,
And they were like deers in headlights, like these big eyes while I was talking. And then, of course, I had the ridiculous fall through the wall, which was just so funny. And I just thought in that moment, it's all about how I recover. It's how I get up. It's how they're going to watch me.
yeah,
And then I thought, like, all these women, they come up to me and they say, you really inspire me. And I think it's like you, I just walk my authenticity. And it
yeah.
was this, they don't understand. They don't know. I was a mess in my 20s and 30s. I was so
Right.
full of self-hatred. And I thought, I have to speak up. I have to
Yeah.
start talking because I look back and I know it's been a 12-year journey for me. It's been a 10-year journey for you, but in a way, it happens alongside other stuff and it's not that hard. I don't feel at any point I've ever
No,
like just felt like the world
no.
was falling apart while I
That's
was
it.
healing. It's actually quite easy, isn't it? In a
Yeah,
weird way.
no. Well, no, and I would say I'm at 13 years and rising, because I mean my
Oh,
healing will
sorry.
continue to
I
my
took some off.
it will continue all of the
It
rest of
will.
my life.
I want to be on my deathbed knowing I have thrown all the healing I could possibly throw at myself. I want to
Yeah.
experience it all.
Yeah, that's it.
Totally.
That's
And would
it.
that be the thing that you would say to listeners is just start? Like there's
Well,
nothing to
so
be fearful of?
here's the thing. There is probably a very, very quiet voice inside you right now that
Yeah.
knows that you're destined for more, right? There's this quiet
Mm.
voice that tells you that something in your life, you know that there's something in your cells that tells you that you are
Mhm.
destined to be bigger in some way in this life, right? Whether that's the
Mhm.
relationship that you've chosen, whether that's like whatever it is, like right now, we don't need to solve that, right? Don't try to swallow the watermelon whole. You can't, like,
No,
this
you can't.
process is emergent, right? But just see if you can start to pay a little bit more attention to the signs that are coming from the universe, and
Mhm.
start to choose just one tiny thing that brings you closer to yourself. So whatever that
Yeah.
is, maybe you go and try a sound bath and see what that does. Maybe
Oh, I love those. Yep.
you try a yin yoga class and see if you can slow yourself down a
Mhm.
little bit. Maybe you don't. Maybe you go to a power yoga class, because honestly, my friends, I went in,
Mm.
my stillness came through the flames, right? So the only
Yeah.
thing I could understand was power and strong and move
Mhm.
and grr. And then through that, through that practice, I learned how to regulate my nervous system. And that was
Mm.
coupled with the work that I was doing with Sarah Williams, who was the person
Yeah.
that, I didn't actually say her name, I must say her name, the meditation
Yeah.
stillness person. And
Yep.
gradually, the culmination of hearing from her and learning yoga, I was like, oh, and gradually my nervous system became more
Mm,
comfortable in stillness. And then I was able to slow down. So don't expect it to
mm.
come overnight. It's not going to come overnight.
It doesn't.
Everyone's got a
No.
unique, emergent healing path. But,
Yeah. I think you're so
just
right.
start to
It's
say
that
yes.
take one step. Take just a tiny little baby step.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that, and I often look at my sister, and she won't. She thinks that if we go, she's going to deal with trauma as ripping the band-aid off in Pandora's box, and I'm like, it's not. There were those,
No.
the little micro layers you get on an onion, those like really, really thin ones. It's like that. It's like peel, 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 and eventually you go, there it is, and then you peel,
Yeah.
peel, 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 and it's like it takes time
It
because you've
takes
protected it and
time.
protected it and protected it.
Yeah,
And so
and the
there's no
brain is
rush.
really the brain is really smart. Like sometimes it
Yeah.
is obviously it does get in our way, but it almost it's like it knows when you're ready for the thing that you need to look
Yeah.
at next, right? So
Yeah.
some stuff will just stay buried until you've grown enough within yourself and you've developed your resilience toolkit
Exactly.
in order to be able to withstand whatever it is that your brain is ready to
Yeah.
uncover next, or your
Yeah.
body
Yeah.
is body is wanting to uncover next. Who knows? The
Exactly.
body
Yeah.
really
It
does
sounds
keep the
very much
score.
like, yeah, it really does. And I've talked about that because from the trauma that happened to me at 3 that I have no recollection of, but my body spits it back out. But you're very much beautifully describing that ego and soul relationship, aren't you? So well. So what is next? I know that you're kind of edging out of the world I first came across you in, which is the same world
Yeah,
as mine, that TA world. Tell me
yeah.
about Bloom. Tell me what you're up to.
Yeah. Well, so Bloom is really the culmination of my life's work, I would say. It started as a sort of 6-week leadership accelerator for women. And it takes women on the journey of self-claiming, actually. So who are you really? Learning
Yeah.
to love and talk about yourself in a way that truly serves you, building your
Mm.
executive team around you, your own personal executive team, building your presence
Mm.
in the workplace, bringing your authenticity, helping to build a rhythm that truly supports you in your working week and therefore your life.
Oh, I love that.
But then also looking at how we really evolve as leaders and how we create environments where humans really get to thrive. And I say it started
Mm.
out as a leadership accelerator. It still will be that, but it is also
Mm.
now. I am about to, in the next few weeks, open it up as
Ooh.
a community space. So that
Oh,
it's
how
it's the
fantastic.
leadership accelerator, but then it's also the community that runs alongside that, which is a safe space for women to learn and grow and get
And
things
cheer each other
wrong.
on.
Right,
Mm.
exactly. And I'm not sure. I'm not
Oh,
sure
the getting
when.
things wrong, I think, is so important. And
Right.
that's fun. That's some of the facade that happens, isn't it, with the not being authentic, as we feel we can't make mistakes. And actually, mistakes are where the learning is. Getting it wrong is where the
Yeah.
learning is. That's where the growth is. It's like, get it wrong. It's fine. Learn
Yeah.
from it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
I'm not
that comes with
sure.
the self compassion and the self care. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I was about to say I'm not sure when this episode will air, but
absolutely no idea either. So thank you for being a great
I'm
guinea
not
pig.
sure. I'm not sure, but I am launching the community in September 2023, with the first cohort being a community of
Yep.
women in HR. And by that, I mean
Amazing.
everybody in HR. So really,
Mm.
because in particular for that group, there's this sort of very very difficult place that we find ourselves in because we have all the
Yes.
information within an organization, which means that often we're not able to champion our own career. We're not able
Hmm.
to get the title that we want, the salary that we want, to elevate ourselves,
Mm.
to think. We're so busy focusing on everybody else that we're not focusing on
Yeah.
ourselves and actually how we grow as a leader. And there is also a
Oh,
huge
that's amazing.
business gain for us stepping into this because when you've got the people who are creating the human experience in an organization truly able to bring their authenticity into the workplace, then the whole company wins, because then we become the fierce lionesses, because it's for women, obviously, lionesses who are protecting the humans, because we love doing that, but we've got to protect ourselves first.
I love that. It's quite a switch from how the world of work was when I started out as well. So I love it. Love it. Brilliant. If people would like to know more about you, what is the easiest? Obviously, you have a website.
So I mean, I would say find me on LinkedIn, and don't just follow me. Invite me to connect, because
explain where you heard about Ruth.
But to my core, I think LinkedIn is unfortunately becoming one of those following platforms. I love it when it's a connection platform. So say hi, like we're peers. Let's connect, right? So connect with me there. But if you want to find out more about Bloom, the website is ourtimetobloom.com.
Oh, love that. Brilliant. And obviously I love following you on Instagram, to be fair.
Oh yeah, Instagram too, at Ruth Penfold. Find me there.
Yeah. I know. I just love it. I think it's where you actually see people's authentic selves.
I think so too.
That's probably why.
I love it.
Oh, Ruth, thank you so much. I mean, what a joy to have this conversation with you, and so many similarities and a few aha moments. So I can't even begin to imagine how much the audience has learnt. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Damage of Words. How brave, how vulnerable, all to inspire listeners like you to take a step, or inspire others to take a step. Imagine what healing we could create if we normalize this conversation. So please pass this on, and of course subscribe, so we can do just that. Until next time, thank you.